Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today we're learning to stop selling commodities and start driving value. I'm joined by Wendy Herbst. Wendy's career spans roles as Chief Commercial Officer and VP at leading organizations, where she managed over $340 million in revenue and drove sales growth. Her expertise in stakeholder engagement, operational excellence, and strategic vision offers a unique perspective on modern sales practices. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Very glad to have you here. Wendy, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So just a little bit about myself. I'm actually here in my home office today. I'm in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. A little bit chilly here for us today, but all things considered, I grew up in Wisconsin. So, definitely a lot warmer down here in Florida than my family is up in Wisconsin. So, and I guess starting from there, I'm a fourth generation dairy farmer. So work ethic comes from there, and then ended up in a very different field. I've spent my career in the chemicals and ingredient space, and started my career working for Sherwin-Williams, and really phenomenal company. Started out selling and went into marketing there. Again, really fantastic company, great foundation for my career. And then I spent the majority of my career on the private equity side. So working within private equity backed businesses, again, always in the chemical and ingredient space, and then really the gamut of commercial roles. So sales, marketing, business development, product management, been responsible for innovation organizations and processes. And then the last 10 years or so on the executive management side of things, and name of the game, like we're talking about today, creating value for those companies within the private equity space and within the chemical space. And I think one of the things that's maybe unique about the chemical industry and that I've truly enjoyed is that chemicals and ingredients is the product that we're selling ultimately, but it goes into so many things. So the amount of markets that I've been able to learn about and work in and really understand how markets are structured and value chains are structured has been expansive. So it's been really, really an enjoyable career.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I know you and I had an opportunity to speak beforehand, and that's kind of what drove today's session. Um, so, can you tell me again, how do you identify opportunities to create value instead of just competing on price?
Sure. Well, I think that, I'm thinking back on our conversation, we talked a lot about the salesperson and kind of what they need to do. And I'll say it this way to practice what I preach, I guess. So how I would answer your question with a question, which is, how do I find a way to learn more? Or how do I find a way to ask more questions? And really, I say it that way because the name of the game is being inquisitive and being curious. And I think that there's kind of two sections to that. So there's the company itself. So how does the company get more curious about who are our customers? How are the markets structured? How are the segments within those markets? And then kind of where do the customers fall within those segments? And why do we define them that way? And how do they go to market? And then really understanding that value chain. And I like that term better than supply chain because it really does come down to value and saying, every link in that chain, everyone has to make money. If they don't, then it breaks down. So really understanding what does that look like? And then does that influence how we organize ourselves so we can best serve the customers within those segments, within those markets? So just really getting inquisitive about that and then being adaptive, right? So understanding what that looks like, structuring our company to best serve our customers, and then also keeping an eye on that, right? What's changing and do we need to change with that? And then once we have that, then it does go to the salespeople, and it really comes down to asking questions. And I think back in our conversation, we talked about how do we kind of determine what that value is? And, we said, what's the playbook, right? What's kind of steps 1 through 4? And it's the step 1 is ask questions. Going in there and saying, how can I solve problems? Help me understand what's keeping you up at night. Remembering I'm a person selling to a person. They have goals. The number 1 goal being get their work done so they can get home to their families and get onto their hobbies. So how do we help them get there? So asking a lot of questions, understanding that. And then steps 2, 3, and 4 really get determined by the answers to those questions. So what are we learning about that customer? What are we learning about how their process works, how they go to market? What problems do they have? What problems do their customers have? What are they working on today to get results for today? And what are they thinking about for the future? And then how do we take that and internalize it into what we do as a company, and how can we help solve those problems? And ultimately, for any company, it kind of comes down to 2 things, which is how can we drive additional revenue for them, or how can we save money, which ultimately, again, we're creating value. So how do we deliver EBITDA? How do we create margin? And we do that by increasing sales. Also can think of that in terms of revenue, and then also cost savings. So again, we're contributing to the bottom line.
So talk to the salesperson who is selling what they believe is a commodity. Talk to the salesperson who is selling logistics services or selling a CRM platform which looks just like every other CRM platform, or ultimately your background selling chemicals, which are absolutely commodities. What do you mean I can't sell just on price? That's all I have to sell on. How would I differentiate otherwise?
So when I hear you say that, Robin, the first thing I think of is, don't tell me chemicals are commodities. They certainly are not. I've made a career in this. And that's really, again, that's the answer to the question, which is, how can we ask our customers to think about our products in terms of value and solving problems if we ourselves don't think of that? So that's really what it comes down to is, and I literally do the visual with when I'm talking with sales teams, so we have to flip that switch in our mind. If we go in and talk to customers and think, my mission is sell the product, my mission is deliver my pitch on my logistics or my CRM or whatever it is, then that's what we're going to go in there and do. But if we flip that switch and we think about what is my mission, and so whatever you need that to be. So again, I would come back to asking questions. So what I would offer the mission should be is, I am going to figure out what problems they're solving today, or how, some version of that question of what problems are they facing? What are they working on when they're not meeting with me? What are the things that are keeping them up at night? I'll come back to that question. So go in there with a different mindset to say, how do I think about this differently so that I can help them think about this differently? If I go in thinking about price, I'm going to talk about price. That's what we're going to talk about. If I go in with a different mindset, I'm asking questions. So now they're giving me different responses. We're having a different conversation than what they anticipated. Now we can all think about it differently. And that's really what it comes down to in terms of, at the salesperson level, to just really retool their thinking. If they want their customers to think about it differently, it starts with them and it starts in their own mind.
Can you give us some examples? I know when we spoke, you gave me some great examples of differentiating. I have a truck of potash I'm going to sell you. How is that any different from anyone else's truck of potash?
So I would go back to what I mentioned before of looking through the entire value chain, right? So I love the example of water, right? That it's necessary for human life, right? But you'll pay vastly more at Disneyland than you'll pay at the grocery store, right? They created scarcity. They're doing all kinds of things to water now, adding flavor, adding vitamins. They're, doing different things with charging the water. And that appeals to a certain audience. So I would go back to what we talked about in the beginning of, let's understand our market. Let's understand how it's structured, the segments within them, what drives them, because that's going to define your segments so that we can then deliver a product that adds value. And then you can say, can I do these things with my product? Is this an opportunity to innovate my water, my potash, and bring then something valuable to those customers? Or is there, again, other questions that we can ask there that help us to understand what truly drives them and what will bring value to them?
You gave me some great examples when we were speaking about ways to differentiate. Maybe it's not changing the chemical formula in any way, shape, or form. The chemical is the chemical, but the chemical delivered on this date versus that date, the guarantee of the chemical delivered on this date versus that date, the holding and storing of that. What are some things that people should be thinking about specifically around creating value? Can you give us some examples beyond those that I was just talking about?
Sure. And yeah, I recall the example that we talked about, and I started to mention, I guess, the value chain piece. So that's why I think that starts to become really critical, where you understand, again, upstream, downstream, from wherever you fall within that, of, again, where did those connections happen and how can you add value there? So one of the examples that I had talked about was that we changed how we priced our product. So, I mean, certainly you can look at things like how do we deliver it? Can we put it in a different package that maybe saves them time or saves them money in terms of delivering to their customer, or storing it within their facility, or utilizing it within their process because they can now open the package faster? Very simple things like that, which again comes back to listening and seeing, making sure that we understand all the pieces of the process and of the value chain. And then, so the example that we had talked about was, not a package, but actually how we priced our product. So what we learned when we looked at the entire value chain, and we had to look very, very far down to, all the way to the consumer, and we were, several links back up the chain. And we realized that because of how they had to write the contracts with a few of those pieces of the chain throughout, they valued having their price validity for a longer period of time. So because we were willing to offer the price for our product that they could get from several other of our competitors at the same price for a longer period of time, they were willing to actually pay more per unit, which allowed us to increase our margins, but also for them to have really reduced risk, is what it came down to. And then that created all sorts of synergies for them in terms of creating contracts and securing assets and inventory for what they were actually doing. It was in the road marking space. So like I said, we were create value for your customers, ask questions, create value for them. You will also be creating value for yourself and for your company as well. So really look at all pieces and parts of it. And the challenge I like to give to sales teams is, like I said, be inquisitive. I can't say that enough. And ask a lot of questions. Ask to see processes. Ask to see warehouses and manufacturing facilities, and then ask a lot of questions about that. And then coming back to the challenge, it's in any response you get from a customer, ask 3 follow-up questions. And if you challenge yourself to do that, 1, you will find it very difficult. And 2, you probably are going to start to feel a little annoying. And maybe you want to stop at the point of completely annoying your customers. That said, if you challenge yourself with that, then you will ask infinitely more questions than if you had not given yourself that challenge. And I promise you will learn a lot more, and you will find value if you keep doing that and make that part of your daily practice.
Let's talk a little bit about marketing. How can sales teams align with marketing to reposition these offerings? If we're not offering based on price anymore, what needs to go into it from a whole company's perspective?
Yeah, I think that this is critical to that piece of it. If you do want to get away from price selling and get to offering solutions, solving problems, value selling, selling based on the value of not only your product, but everything that you do for that customer, including deliver it, including package it, any other services that you might be offering, really looking at that as a total package and value that you're offering there. This absolutely requires, and I'll use the word collaboration, and then we can expand on that, between sales and marketing. And I describe it as, with my teams, a read-write relationship, and it has to be ongoing. And when I say read-write, meaning that it's not marketing just pushing materials out, telling them this is how you will do it and this is the price you will offer it because this is the value we've determined. It has to be, back and forth. And I do believe that it starts with marketing, and I'm thrilled to see this in the organizations I have worked for and feel honored and humbled to have been able to lead some of those efforts, have watched it happen within those organizations and in the chemical industry in general. And I think a lot of industries are seeing this shift where it needs to start with marketing. And that is, go back to just understanding how markets are structured, what are the segments within them, how the customers, I define a segment as a shared set of needs. So let's make sure that we really understand that in terms of how it pertains to our product and how we go to market, which we've already learned is very dependent on how they go to market. So making sure that we have that picture, and then bring in other functions, right? Because we're looking at everything throughout the value chain. How do they produce it? How do we deliver it? So let's talk with manufacturing, with supply chain, with finance, and let's ask these questions. This is how we see the world, and this is how we would structure markets and segments, and how we would talk to customers. These are the type of tools that we believe that we need because of this understanding, and let everybody poke holes in that, and then kind of get to that base understanding of how do we want to structure this, and then we can design a plan around that. And then that's where it goes to the sales team then to say, you are boots on the ground. You are having these conversations with customers. You're asking all these questions and all of those follow-up questions. Then bring all of that information back. And what gets measured gets results, right? So making sure that we're documenting those things, and we're tracking those things, and we're looking at, it's a constant, it's an ongoing process to keep looking at that and saying, okay, if we defined segments as a shared set of needs, as we've collected all of this information based on this structure directly from the sales team coming from our customers, do we still believe it? Does it still hold true, or do we need to make some adjustments there because we can serve our customers better? We could do better for our company because we could do better for our customers if we make changes there. And then, just like I said, ongoing, then make those adjustments and, continue to get that information from the customers. Like I said, boots on the ground, they're the front line. And I love, and I, again, have done a lot of this within my career. I've served in marketing roles as well. And then take your technical people, take your marketing people, take your manufacturing, your supply chain people to your customers. They will ask a different set of questions than a salesperson will. And it also invites additional people within your customers into the conversation as well, again, allowing you to learn more, right? If you say, I'm bringing my supply chain person, they'll bring a supply chain person. They speak a different language than us commercial guys, right? So we get to learn more that way. That, every salesperson, that kind of rule of 5, right? We always want to continue to penetrate further into the organization, and how do we have more conversations and know more people so that we really create more stickiness with that relationship. So it does collaborative relationship, kind of coming back around, Rob, collaborative relationship with sales and marketing from a commercial perspective to really create that picture, read-write relationship, make sure we understand it, make sure we're being adaptive. And then I love to involve other functions as well so that we learn as much as we can.
So as you're involving these other functions, what are some challenges organizations face as they attempt to reposition themselves from commodity focused businesses to a value driven model?
So this is the thing about learning a lot, right? It, certainly if you're doing it right and getting all of the information, it will undoubtedly lead to change, right? Where we need to maybe do some things differently. If we're able to, the example I gave, right, of offering price validity for a longer period of time. Well, that required us to step outside of some policies and procedures that we had in pricing. And then we had to think about, well, what does that mean then for that policy? Is it something we would do more broadly than the segment that we had to define that for? So, but these are, I look at these as the good problems, right? The problems you want to have, because it means we're growing, it means we're learning, and we're finding a way to add value to our customers, which adds value to our company. So there's, that's kind of a big category, right? Of it's going to create change, and you're going to have to figure out, is that something that we want to do? Does it align with the mission and vision of the company? And does it still, stay true to who we are as in terms of being a company? And, only, the company itself can answer those questions. For the most part, comes down then to, like I said, answering those questions and then looking at impact to the company, because ultimately missions and visions of companies, right, are to be profitable for shareholders, et cetera, while delivering value to our customers and some version of that. So if we've learned a way to better serve customers and it can be done in a profitable way for us and for our customers, then we put plans in place to start making those changes.
Beyond revenue, which is really a lagging indicator, how do you measure success when implementing a value-based approach?
I am a huge fan of leading and lagging KPIs, right? So you just gave an example of a lagging KPI, and really the financial output, right? Like your monthly report, every line on the P&L, right, is going to be a lagging indicator of what's happened in the last month and then kind of year to date, depending on where you are in the year. And then really it comes down to, I go back where you said step one, ask a lot of questions, then determine step two because of the answers to those questions. So how do you, once you have those, then utilizing those to determine what are those leading KPIs? What are the things that you want to measure? And how I would define that is, okay, we know we want to grow in those lagging indicators, right? If we think about financial performance, et cetera. So what are the behaviors and actions that we believe we need to take and things we need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis in order to achieve that from a lagging indicator perspective, and then work backwards from there. So, and I think it's really important, particularly, as a company, and again, really grateful to have been a part of companies going through this change when you're on this journey of kind of getting out of that commodity product and the chemical industry molecule mindset and going towards this solution focused markets. How do we solve problems for customers? That sort of structure. As you go down that path, that it's important to remember it is really different, and be willing to get creative, I guess is the best way to say it. So be agile in setting what those leading indicators might be. So silly example, if you will, we talked about asking a lot of questions and, kind of that ask 3 follow-up questions. So if you then made it part of a salesperson's requirements that they have to track how many questions did you ask in the sales call, they will definitely be more mindful of how many questions that they're asking. If you set targets for that, of how many questions do you need to ask, right? Then they'll start to develop lists and they'll start sharing them and they'll do best practices and they'll find a way if they know that they're being measured on those things. So like I said, maybe a silly example, but something I've done in my past and it was effective. We definitely learned a lot more, and we had salespeople asking a lot of questions, and everything I just described was from real world experience. We had all kinds of side meetings about these are the ones I'm asking, those kind of lists going all over. So, all of that to say then that work backward, start with the end in mind, work backwards from there and say, what are the actions that we need to take in order to get to these results. And then design, no matter how different they might look or feel, design those leading indicators around ultimately where you want to get to.
Awesome. Wendy, this has been great. How can people learn more? Where can they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is going to be the best place to get a hold of me. And it's just, Wendy Herbst, and you can find me there.
Excellent. We now have a newsletter. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at SalesTV.live/newsletter. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of the panelists and everyone here at Sales TV, to our guest Wendy and to our audience, thank you all for being